As we've already seen, in the late 20s and early 30s, Poland was trying to build a navy to protect its coastline. With a small economy and smaller shipbuilding industry, it couldn't build ships itself, and of the nations that could, only France, thanks to kickbacks, would help them. So, in 1926, it ordered a pair of destroyers from the French based on their Brest-class destroyers, though modified to meet Polish requirements. The biggest difference being that they were fitted for mine laying. These would start entering service in 1930 as the two ships of the 1,520-ton Wicher class. Industrial delays repeatedly slowed their construction. Build quality also wasn't up to scratch, forcing numerous redos. There were also several questionable design choices. Such things happen when a program's goal is money laundering rather than warfighting. Burza was better than Wicher, but not by much. The Poles simply had no choice but to stick with them. It was play the game or nothing. When completed, they were okay destroyers, but not great. A giant drawback was that their main guns were single-purpose, low-angle guns. They would have massively differing careers. Wicher herself would be lost within the first week of the war. Burza, meanwhile, would escape to England as part of the Peking group and fight throughout the war, being modified several times. That being said, by late 1943, she was getting pretty tired, and spares for her machinery were sitting behind enemy lines in France. She could have had her engines rebuilt and or replaced, but realistically, she wasn't worth it. Post-war, she was given back to the Polish Navy and rearmed with Soviet weapons. Eventually, she was turned into a museum ship, but was eventually scrapped due to deterioration. The main reason for Burza's survival was Operation Peking. At the end of August 1939, the Poles and British realized this was about to go south, and a deal was struck. Most of the major Polish ships would sail to the British Isles for refit. They in turn would help bolster the Royal Navy's numbers. This allowed some of their ships to survive and fight as free units. As it turned out, it was literally at the last minute. As the Peking ships left port on August 30th, they sailed right past the German invasion force, going the other way in the dark of night. Everyone knew what it was, but because war hadn't been declared yet, they were powerless to do anything. I personally find this, with hindsight, be one of the most melancholy moments of what would soon become the war. The more you think about it, the worse it gets. A random, final separation of friends and family. The war was full of them. If you're on the Peking force, you get to live happily ever after. In a new country, yes, but still, if you're not on the Peking force, well, you get a few weeks of fierce fighting. If you survive, then it's years of Nazi occupation. Knocks on the door in the middle of the night by the Gestapo. If you survive that, then you'll probably spend the rest of your life living under the authoritarian domination of the Soviet Union and its catastrophic economic and social policies, assuming they don't send you to the gulag. You're free, you're not. You live, you don't. Wicher was started February 19th, 1927, and was completed July 8th, 1930. Burza was started November 1st, 1927, and was completed July 10th, 1932. Main armament was 4 single 130mm 40 caliber low-angle guns in single mounts, 2 forward and 2 aft. 2 triple 550mm French torpedo tubes were carried at the main deck level on the center line between the rear funnel and the aft gun house. 2 depth charge racks and 2 depth charge throwers were carried. They could carry up to 60 mines. They were also fitted with a French sonar. Propulsion was provided by 3 boilers, each venting to their own funnel. These provided steam to 2 turbines, each driving a propeller, to produce 33,000 horsepower. This drove them up to 33 knots. Burza went through some modifications throughout the war and afterward. I'm not going to go over the post-war ones. While undergoing repairs in mid-1940, she had her rear torpedo bank replaced with a British 76mm anti-aircraft gun, and the mines were removed. In 1942, she replaced her A 130mm gun with a Hedgehog launcher, and her X 130mm gun was replaced with a quad Bofors 40mm. She was also fitted with Types 271 and 292 radar, along with Type 144 sonar in place of her old French gear. Wicher, along with Greif, was sunk September 3, 1939, at heel by the Luftwaffe. Burza left Gdynia on the evening of August 30, 1939, and arrived in England late on September 1st. In April 1940, she took part in the Battle of Norway, but fell back to the English Channel once the Battle of France started in mid-May. While providing fire support off Calais on May 24th, she was bombed and heavily damaged, sending her back to England for repairs. Repairs were completed in early August 1940, and in mid-October she joined the Channel Force and was part of the group that bombarded Cherbourg. In mid-November, she collided with a trawler. Repairs would keep her out of action until the start of August 1941. She then escorted convoys to Iceland, but in February 1942 went in for a refit that would last most of the year. Re-entering service at the beginning of December 1942, she started escorting Atlantic convoys until September 1943, when she was essentially relegated to an anti-submarine warfare training ship around the British Isles for the rest of the war. In 1951, she was towed to Poland and returned to the Polish Navy. Rearmed with Soviet weapons, she served with the Polish Navy until 1960, when she became a museum ship. Unfortunately, she deteriorated, and in 1977 was replaced by the Bliskovice and scrapped.